source book. I think it's, or the Stackpole short story. One or the other. Yeah.
Now, BattleTech was pretty much a hit right out of the gate, right? It was kind of 0 to 100.
Well,
you took off and just bam. Tell us when you first knew it was going to be something big, I guess is the question.
So when we first, it was called Battle Droids originally.
Right.
And when we printed 5,000 copies, and I really kind of thought it was going to be a one and done.
Oh,
right?
Really? So you had no, at the time you printed it, you had no plans for anything beyond that?
No.
Yet here we are 40 years later.
Yeah, no concept that it was going to connect, or we didn't have a line plan or anything like that.
Okay.
And it was like, I could buy that many model kits. So, put it out, because and so then it as it started to really take off, like, we should follow that up. I had always believed in doing a lot of world development, because I always, something as I've gone through my career, I work with a lot of big companies, like, Planned Parenthood versus, happy mistake. It's like worth investing a little bit more time and money to really build a world, just in case you get lucky and it takes off. You have a foundation to work from, versus having written yourself into a corner right in the beginning. So we had done some good world building to start, and even though it was very short in terms of how we spread it, because they were like paragraphs. These weren't source books when we started. And then it started to take off, and then we got a nastygram from Lucasfilm.
Right.
And Lucas claimed that they had the trademark for droid, even though we could clearly prove that it had been in vernacular for a very long time. And but we were at the time negotiating with Lucas to get the rights for Star Wars to do an RPG, and which is when you mentioned Renegade Legion. All the game systems for Renegade Legion were developed for Star Wars. And then when that licensing, there's a whole separate story about that. When that fell apart, then I repurposed it as Renegade Legion. So, and also, little tiny game company versus Lucasfilm, we weren't going to get into a fight about the name.
Yeah.
So I actually wrote a little computer program where I put in a whole bunch of different words that I thought were cool, and had it randomly put words together.
Very first title generator.
Yeah, and it came up with BattleTech. Right, and then eventually, I started focusing on that, and then it eventually came up with MechWarrior. So it's just like it was It was a generative AI, incredibly stupid generative AI I had put together to help me name this stuff. So that's how I got renamed BattleTech, which I actually think is a much better name in long term than Battle Droids anyway. So thank you, Lucas. Lawyers.
For forcing your hand, yeah, exactly.
And so we went back to second edition print, and then started thinking about how to expand it. And from the very beginning, the premise was treat it like a role-playing game. Right? It's a tabletop game, but treat it like a role-playing game.
With the histories and
the histories and the depth and the story, because I really thought that that's what I love when I come to the table. I love bringing more to it than the pieces, and so if we kind of create this collective held fiction, then it just makes everything that happens on the tabletop even richer, right? Which is where the novels come in and the source book come in and all that stuff to help create scenario generation and just make it all richer on the table. So we started plowing through those. And the source books were, how does one say this? Hastily assembled. And so we ended up with some really stupid shit, which we, over the years, went back and kind of retconned a lot of it. But there was also a lot of good stuff in there. But yeah, I mean,
certainly more good than bad.
Yeah, there was more good than bad. But there were examples of planets being defended by warhammers in orbit, and other really stupid shit like that. I had, because Star Wars was another one of those changed my life kind of things, but generated a huge amount of aliens everywhere afterwards, and so one of the things that they're like, okay, well let's do a fiction where we don't meet anybody else, right? We are the bad guys in the universe and the only ones. So that was kind of one of the things we kind of.
Which I think is a unique take on any of the science fictional universes. Usually it's star spanning, hundreds of planets, and dozens of alien races we go out and find in, but we've stuck to that kind of milieu that humankind is its own worst enemy.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And it's a very interesting take to have and to keep going this long. Mike, I had a question for you because So you got the Warrior contract.
Uh-huh.
You did get the contract first, right?
Yes.
Two being a freelancer.
Yeah.
And then you had. I guess my question is, how much information did you have to go off, and how much did you actually create in the writing of the book? So I'm curious about that.
Well,
aspect.
there were. I mean, I think I had the House Steiner. Was the House Steiner book the first one that got published?
I think Steiner was first, then Debian.
Or
then Karita.
Karita, yeah. So I had the Steiner book extant, and then I had the manuscript of Karita. So that's how far. That is how early on that we were doing this, and so other than that, in the box set, there were basic descriptions of worlds and stuff like that. I remember those kids. There's a half a page on Solaris, and it was like, great, we've got a setting, we can use this, bang, go, but you've only got half a page, so that means you get to make up a lot of stuff. So I got to build out a lot of Solaris and how all that set up and everything, which was a lot of fun, and get to build it. And I think that was one of the other cool things, BattleTech is giant robots, smacking each other around, but there's room for all the different stories. And I very much saw Solaris as Switzerland or Spain. Technically they're neutrals, but spies are running all over the place. Intrigues are happening.
Something because we had it as this weird planet where even though you had wars going on, you had representatives of all there. But you really took that and ran with it and turned it, because I remember we had that discussion of like, what if Switzerland meets Las Vegas?
Yeah. Yep.
And
And so that was, that ended up being a lot of fun, and that also, for me anyway, I'm real comfortable with doing politics. I got a degree in history, and family was in politics and stuff. So, I understood that, and understood it in a way that a lot of, especially science fiction writers, don't, because most of them hate it. And so, being able to do that, having the micro political stuff going on in Solaris, and then the macro movements, in the rest of the universe, made for a lot of fun. A lot of led us to characterize a lot of the nation states that weren't terribly well characterized, or they were there as a sketch, and we get to we're able to lock a lot more stuff in, and then be able to pit one house against the other, and that, which made it, that's all the excitement. I mean, there are things that, if not for the political background and not for all the work everybody did in building this stuff up, we wouldn't have nearly as much of the punch to the stories that we actually do.
And it was the start of the kind of, early on, we kind of realized we needed to have an arc. We needed to see where the universe was going, because we now had a lot of different products that we were trying to coordinate the storytelling, right? And the time frames of them different. Like the novels took a lot longer to go through traditional publishing than a source book or an expansion. And so we needed to kind of create a calendar of what events and how they connected. And then when video games got introduced, it got even more complicated because of the dev cycles for those. So we would start to have a biannual conference where we would get together, and I think you guys still do, right?
It's every couple of years.
Yeah, every 3 years roughly. Yeah.
Okay.
We just had one recently this January.
Yeah. Where we create those arcs.
It's been a year for how things
It's been a year. Yeah.
Anyway, sorry.
But yes, that's when we started that process 40-ish years ago about trying to figure out how to create these arcs together.
It was when we did the first 20-year jump. That was the first of those meetings that we had, at least that I was involved in.
Well, yeah, because earlier than that, like the lead up to the Fifth Succession War, was something that was the first big kind of universe shift, right? Because the initial game setting was in the relatively quiet period after the Fourth Succession War, right? And that was intentional because we wanted everything to be small scale action, right? Because the game initially was you have a lance, and it wasn't made, so we wanted to make it where a lance was a powerful thing, and it was a big, and so that scale of battle was really meaningful. That's why I wanted to set it in that kind of lull period where everybody was exhausted and the armies were depleted, so you had, small units were important. And then we built back up, and with the novel series launched the Fifth Succession.
Speaking of arcs, the Justin plot from cashier to double agent to Was that developed jointly? Did you come up with that?
That was all me.
That was it.
Yeah.
Okay. And
Yeah,
what,
they were very-
what was the genesis of that? Why did you choose that storyline to go through all 3 books?
Well, okay, so when we were approached, the first one was, kind of explore what's going on, and for me, racism and prejudice is always a theme that fascinated, horrified me, that sort of thing, and it seemed that to because of the conflicts as set up tended to be between these 5 nation states. How fast can we make it recognizable of what was going on? So having Justin, having the compelling confederation, having the racism, having that really drew really sharp, fast battle lines between some of these factions. And so that was sort of that. I mean, for Justin, it's a sacrifice and redemption arc. I mean, he sacrifices a lot. For his nation, and it was, and so that was. I just, it wanted the intrigue, the whole spying part of it, and I also felt Solaris was probably the easiest and most accessible point for doing mech combat on a recognizable level. Because with Solaris, we're seeing on an individual pilot level, and then elsewhere we're getting to see it on a bigger unit. So once you've seen it on Solaris on this small level, it's easier to relate to the to the larger level.
I would say it's also easier to bring people together there. It's kind of like the Planetary Rick's Cafe.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And the gladiatorial theme really, connected to the Roman
Yep.
gladiatorial really well.
Tying into that.
And I remember when you first pitched Valhalla.
Oh yeah.
Totally loved it.
Yeah.
That
Yeah. Well, and that for me was again, in being a game designer, being a developer as well as being a writer, you get these things that are. It was never said in any of the source material I was handed, but it just seemed to me that Valhalla had to exist.
Yeah.
It just had to, and so being able to bring it to life, and then for me, and I know for you, you watch these things that for us are these little brain sparks, brainstorms. You lay some stuff out, and then you watch other people run with it. It's like this is so cool. It's you start the wildfire and it just keeps going. But I do remember. I remember when doing the Warriors trilogy. I was working on Warrior Repose, and you called from Facet during the Christmas party to tell me the Comstar subplot of the whole thing. It was like, yeah, you realize this wasn't in it before. Well, yeah, but we got to put it in now. Okay, whatever. Sure. So that was fun. That was one of those things of, okay, I'll scramble, I'll figure this out. But that was all sort of the Wild West of us not knowing what we were doing and putting those things.
And getting a great idea that we're going to shoehorn it in. Exactly.
Yep.
Be sure to smash our like button and subscribe to our channel.
Crowdfunding is when lots of people give you small amounts of money to help your passion project come to life.